afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this talk. I'm here to introduce Chantelle Isaacs, who is 7 years of experience working with students, tech, and teams. Chantelle is currently a career coach working with junior Rails developers entering the industry, as well as teams who hire and mentor them. She also plays D&D sessions weekly. Welcome up, Chantelle.
It hits different when all of a sudden you walk up and the lights are in your face. Hi guys, hi friends. Thanks so much for being here. I am really excited to be here. Like John said, my name is Chantelle. I am a career coach. I do career services at Learn Academy, where our students learn Ruby on Rails. I've been coming to these conferences this is my fourth one in the past 2 years, and it's really exciting to be up on a stage this time. So let's get started. Welcome to Dungeons and Developers. We're going to be talking about how Dungeons and Dragons and the analogies from it can help us look at building diverse engineering teams. So before we get too started, first, hopefully you all saw the pieces of paper that were on your chairs. We will get to those shortly. If you didn't get a piece of paper on your chairs, either go steal one from an empty seat or raise your hand and John will give you one. Secondly, I would like to poll the audience because I assumed that coming to a conference like this, the Venn diagram of people who play D&D and people who would attend has a pretty good overlap, but I don't want to just assume that. So if I could get everyone using your hand, either put up 0 fingers for you have 0 clue what D&D is, and you're just here because a friend dragged you, up to 5 fingers to you are a level 18 sorcerer rogue. Please. I'm seeing a lot of fingers. This is good. I'm seeing a couple 2s. I see a 0 in the back. Thank you. A couple 1s, but I'm seeing majority 3s, 4s, 5s. The good news is if you have no clue about Dungeons and Dragons, you should still be able to take away some good stuff from this talk. If not, talk to me later and I'll give you the whole rundown on how to play the game in about 15 minutes. So as an orientation for everybody, Dungeons and Dragons is what's known as a tabletop role-playing game. You have a group of people who have decided that you want to go on an adventure in a pretend land together. You have someone who is narrating this adventure, who is your dungeon master. They are guiding you through the people you meet, the troubles you face, the treasure you find, and all together you are collaboratively creating a story. It's all about working together to achieve the goals that your dungeon master sets in front of you, and you have to do that as a diverse adventuring party. All that being said really shortly, it's playing fantasy pretend with rules. Those rules usually involve rolling dice. So there's a huge element of chance and risk to the game, which we can't really do in real life. We are given what we're given, right? So if you are familiar with Dungeons & Dragons, I'm not going to be talking about dice rolling here, but we are going to be talking about a lot of things that are familiar to you. So it's RailsConf. Why would I bring a D&D talk to RailsConf? Thankfully, I'm not alone if you went to the talk before lunch. So hopefully you're getting a nice healthy dose of D&D this RailsConf. But my reasons for talking about D&D, first, some of the parallels that I've seen is that in working with juniors and the teams that hire them, I've seen a lot of parallels between the roles that people play on a team and then the roles that people play in an adventuring party. You need to have diverse people to fill these roles in order to have a healthy amount of perspective and look at things from multiple angles. Also, the skills that people bring. I work mainly with career transitioners, people who have been in different careers prior. And let's face it, the majority of us did something before we went into tech. Maybe it was flipping burgers at McDonald's, maybe it was landscaping with your dad during the summer, but we all bring something with us as that has given us our skills and how we have developed them over the years. No one wants to just have someone Leroy Jenkins and push code to prod. You have to work collaboratively, but working on a team is an essential piece of being on a development team, just as it is in Dungeons & Dragons. You can really mess up everyone's fun time with this game if all of a sudden you just go and do your own thing. Working together and understanding your team and having that collaboration is something that I noticed that was really similar. And finally, the diversity of having a diverse adventuring party, that strengthens the team. It strengthens the experience that everyone has. It lets you know who you can count on and who brings unique things to the table, just like on an engineering team. The more diverse an engineering team, the more we can draw from that and build things that make the world a better place. You don't want everybody to look and act and think exactly the same way as you do. Otherwise, you end up having huge blind spots. So the more diversity you have, the more you can have coverage over the things you don't notice. So, getting into the pieces of paper that were on your table, and if you did not get one or you are just more tied to your computer, there's a QR code. And I finally figured out how to make a fillable PDF, you guys. I finally did it. So feel free to go there and grab that. We're gonna be filling this out together. So we're gonna start by you filling this out for yourself, because it's best to know how you would fill this out before we start talking about teams. So let's do that together, shall we? Starting up at the top, please fill in your username. That's just a pun that I wanted to put on a page. But let's start with our developer backgrounds. So like I said, nobody just starts knowing how to code. So what are the origins that you bring? From what career? Maybe it could be something about your upbringing, or maybe you were super influenced by the work your parents did, but your background is going to be a huge influence on what you bring to a team. So in Dungeons & Dragons, it's a fantasy world. There are a lot more than just humans in this fantasy world. You have dwarves and elves and fill in the blank. So let's talk about backgrounds and what your Dungeons & Dragons background might be. If you have a background in leadership, management, this could be entrepreneurship, maybe you have a military background. Some of the skills and attributes that you have are things like charisma, strength, decisiveness, inspiring others. Congratulations, you are a Dragonborn. So please fill that in on your character sheet. If you have a background in service and hospitality, this is what would be on my sheet. Customer service, retail, healthcare, social work, working with people. You have great people skills, you are adaptable, you have a lot of resourcefulness, then congratulations, you are a halfling. My fellow hobbits. If you have a background in engineering and construction, so civil engineering, the sciences, carpentry, maybe you worked with your hands a lot, you're someone who has a lot of precision, craftsmanship, problem solving, you are a dwarf. If you have a background, maybe this is a little bit of a cheat, but maybe you did just kind of work your way in through startups or tech. Or game development is another popular one that I've seen. You have a lot of creativity, independence, maybe you're very much an entrepreneur in that space. You have a passion for innovation. Then you are a tiefling. If you come from the creative industries, drama, design, arts. This could even be the culinary arts, maybe. I know I've met people at these conferences who have been chefs for years before getting into tech. Writing, marketing, some of the things you have innovation, you think outside of the box, you are a storyteller, then you are an elf. I heard someone excited about that one. And if none of these really fit, you are more of a generalist, which is absolutely fine. You are a jack of all trades. You have good communication skills. You understand how to get the job done. This could be a background in business or education, law I put in here, multidisciplinary fields. Then you are our tried and true human, and there's nothing wrong with that. So of these, and again, I saw a lot of 3s, 4s, 5s. You might be thinking, Chantelle, there's a lot more races in Dungeons & Dragons than this. I only have 30 minutes, you guys. I had to pare down. So go ahead, fill in your sheet, which background most aligns with yours. And if you feel that more than one, put both. There are such things as multi-classes and other things that we won't get too far into, but you are more than allowed to put more than one thing on your page. So I'm curious, by show of hands, how many people put Dragonborn? I'm seeing a couple, not very many. Own it, it's good. How many of you put halfling, service and hospitality? All right, we are alike. Engineering, construction. Okay, we're getting there. Tech and startups, who just dive right into that? Creative industries. Yes. And how many of you are the generalists? Love it. Amazing. Now, going into roles. A team is made up of more than one type of person. We are at RailsConf, so I have an idea where the majority of you will put on your sheets with this. But regardless, we're going to go over some of the different roles that are on development teams, and we're aligning this to the classes in Dungeons & Dragons. Classes are the jobs that you have, is the really simple way of putting it. But the different jobs that you have give you different skills and abilities. So, all of you here who are back-end devs, you are wizards. Congratulations. You understand how to work the magic of the development process with technical mastery. Now, those of you who are imposters here and are front-end devs, you are sorcerers. I'm joking about imposters here. But you are sorcerers, and you are able to weave the visible interactive elements of the application. If you're a designer, you are a bard. You know how to craft user experiences with creativity and artistry. If you work in QA, you are a barbarian. You hit stuff until it breaks. If you're a team lead, you are a fighter. You know how to lead the team with strategic strength and acumen. And if you are a project manager, you are a rogue. You know how to navigate through projects with agility and be strategic in what might be coming. If you are product manager, you are a druid. You know how to keep the natural balance between what a user needs, the business goals, and what is actually technically feasible by the team. And finally, if you work in DevOps, you are a cleric. You know how to add the healing and enhancement spells that the team needs in order to support the application's infrastructure. So, going through these, again, you may say, Chantelle, there's more than 8 roles or classes. I know, but please tell me which one on your character sheet. How many of you are all wizards? A nice majority. Do we have any front-end devs in the room? Sorcerers? Yes. Bards? Designers? No bards. The world needs more music. Barbarians? Anybody? Okay. What about team leads? All our fighters. What about rogues, project managers? All right. Product managers, druids? And DevOps, clerics? Awesome. Amazing. Going into the next piece, as you see, we're working across the top of the page. We have levels. And I was encouraged to give a trigger warning before this, which sounds scary, but just not really. My opinion on levels is a little unique, and you might disagree with me. So I'd love to talk with you after this if you do disagree with me. I have 2 scenarios here, or 2 people. First, we have someone who has a computer science degree. They're a senior developer at this point. They've been working in the industry for 8 years. Next person, person 2, they're a boot camp grad. They transitioned into tech after 8 years of teaching. What level would both of these people be? Say that again? Too early to call. Fair, I'm not giving you a ton of information. But even with just this basic information, my theory with this, and this is my presentation, is that these people are both level 8. That level in this analogy is based upon years of experience in a professional environment. It's hard because we use level language a lot when we're talking about a career in tech. We use language like junior, mid-level, senior, like we're talking in level language about someone's career path. But in this analogy with Dungeons & Dragons, I truly believe that level actually has nothing to do with technical capacity, and that's all going to come in skills and abilities in just a minute. So for you, think about how long it's been since you've been working some kind of professional job. How many years is that? Go ahead and put that as your level. So, moving into abilities. Abilities are 6 categories, and underneath those abilities are skills. So we're going to cover what the abilities are, and then we'll talk about each one of them and then the skills that are under them. You can see those down the left side of your page. So abilities in Dungeons & Dragons, like I said, there's 6 categories. They are strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. That means nothing if you don't know Dungeons and Dragons, so I like to explain them using the tomato analogy. Strength is how many tomatoes you can carry. Dexterity is how many tomatoes you can dodge. Constitution is how many tomatoes you can get hit by without going down. Intelligence is knowing that a tomato is a fruit, not a vegetable. Wisdom is knowing not to put tomatoes in a fruit salad. And charisma is being able to sell a tomato-based fruit salad. So, everyone has some of these abilities and skills in some measure, and it's that unique balance between all of them that tells us what we bring to our parties in Dungeons & Dragons or our engineering teams. So, as we go through this section, we're going to use that 0 to 5 ratio, and I'm not asking you all to raise your hands again, but as you're filling out your character sheet, if you're filling in a 0, that doesn't mean you don't have it. It just means you have not put extra effort into honing this skill. A 0 is not bad. It just means that this is an area where you can see yourself developing. Up to 5, where you are the greatest of all time. So 0 up to 5 is how you can add numbers into this part of your sheet. And in the skills next to it, you can just circle or add a check mark next to any skills that you also feel you are specifically proficient in. So going back to our idea of level, if both of those people were level 8, that doesn't mean that you would evaluate each of them equally if you were hiring for a position, right? So our first ability, being strength, is equal to technical capacity. And of course, if you're evaluating for hiring a senior dev on your team, you have an idea of what the minimum technical capacity would be for this person. And this is where that first person probably would have a much higher score than someone who has just finished a boot camp. They may be the same level, but this is where the variance lies. So your strength being technical capacity, just like in Dungeons & Dragons, characters need to be strong to wield weapons, and our technical strength is needed in order to produce the code, right? It's needed in order to do the job that we're getting hired to do. So underneath this, specifically athletics, which is the Dungeons & Dragons skill, is equal to coding proficiency. So an analogy with this could be maybe someone has a ton of experience working in hardware. They've built computers their whole lives. They understand hardware really well. They could have a pretty high technical capacity, but their coding proficiency would not be as high. So there are ways to look at these separately, and one does not necessarily, being high in one does not necessarily mean you are high in everything underneath it. So thinking about how we're going to, at the end, talk about building teams, it's important to think about how you're measuring these different things as you're looking at professional development for your team, as well as who you may want to hire next. What are the minimum qualifications you need, and what are the other skills that you may not have considered? I'm getting ahead of myself, though. Our second ability is dexterity, which equates to agile problem solving. So can you look at an issue and come up with a solution quickly? Can you adapt to the changing requirements? We all know what that's like. So our skills in Dungeons & Dragons being acrobatics, sleight of hand, and stealth, adaptability, attention to detail, and discretion. Discretion being, do you see an issue and are you able to resolve it without raising every flag imaginable? Are you able to be discreet about your solutions and alert people after something has happened, or raise the flags when it's genuinely needed? Our third ability is constitution. And there are not specifically skills under this, but you'll see two things next to it and that we want to talk about. Your constitution, again, how many tomatoes you could get hit by. We're going to relate this to stress. So how much resilience do you have? How much persistence do you have? The days and hours can be incredibly long, right? So how can you stay focused? Are you able to stay productive even when the blockers just keep hitting you? So some of the things that come from your constitution are your hit points. In Dungeons & Dragons, that's how much you can actually get hit by before you are downed and die. With this, we're looking at this as stress tolerance. Are you able to endure challenges, heavy workload, pressure on the job, maybe the occasional attack of tight deadlines? We're going to put a number in there. You can, whatever you assessed your 0 to 5 constitution score as, multiply that by 5, and that's your hit point level, your number of hit points. The second piece of this is your armor class. So in Dungeons & Dragons, do you have good armor? How hard is it to hit you? And this we're going to equate to stress resistance. Do you have good boundaries? Do you actually close your laptop at 5 o'clock and walk away and go walk your dog or play with your kids, right? Do you have something that helps you prevent stress from actually sticking. What does that look like in your life? So thinking about how we can prevent stress from being a burden, that's something that takes practice. That's something that sometimes you need people in your life who love you to remind you how to take a step back. So for armor class, whatever you scored your constitution as, add 10 to that. Moving forward, intelligence. Tomatoes are fruit, not a vegetable. This is being innovative with your solutions. What do you know, and how do you apply what you know to a problem? How do you go and search out new things to know that are relevant to the problems you're facing now? So things like being innovative, metacognition, having an understanding of your own past and history and being able to apply the lessons you've learned to the future, and thinking critically, your investigation or critical thinking about a problem. How do you come up with innovative solutions? Wisdom is strategic foresight. So it's not just understanding where the project is now, it's understanding where it needs to go. This is things like building in space for futures in the future, thinking about that. Understanding how you can be strategic with the decisions you're making, understanding where some of the pitfalls might happen. So this also comes into knowing that things are happening in the future. I've put empathy under this, being able to understand problems, but I think that also applies to the work that we're doing. We're creating things that are meant to be used by humans, so being empathetic to your user can be part of that as well. Insight, your emotional intelligence. Are you aware of how you handle things, how you react emotionally, or how you restrain those things? Perception, how aware are you of what's going on your team? Or how aware are you of what's going on other teams and how that's affecting the product? And then survival is risk management. How are you being strategic, again, about decisions to prevent big issues from happening? Finally, we come to charisma. Charisma is collaborative communication. You want to be able to work together. How do you work with the team you're on? How do you work with the other people around you, like stakeholders? And how do you be someone who energizes your team or inspires them? So deception falls under charisma in Dungeons & Dragons, which sounds like a negative trait, but it is essential in the world of adventuring. In engineering, I've turned that into tactical diplomacy. How are you able to be tactical about problems that come up, or needs that your team has, or issues that you're facing, and how you need support from higher up to help you with that? Intimidation is assertiveness. It's important to stand up for yourself. The boundaries that you need, standing up for people on your team if you notice things. We had a great workshop yesterday around inclusion in the workplace, and this comes into mind specifically, where you want to be able to stand up for those on your team, or stand up for yourself and the needs that you have. Performance is public speaking. That doesn't necessarily mean signing up for a talk at RubyConf, but it could mean just presenting the final product to other people in the business. This can be jumping on and leading team calls. And persuasion would be leadership. Are you a leader on your team? And that doesn't necessarily mean being a team lead, but it can mean being someone who is inspiring, motivating, encouraging to reach an end goal. So we've moved through that left side of your page. I want to make sure that we have time to get to the team portion. So let's get over to languages. On the right side of your page, we have 3 blocks. Languages are, of course, we're at a tech conference, the languages that you can write code in, right? So Ruby on Rails would be one. I put Postgres, React, that all applies here. I also want to think about the languages that maybe you speak. This is a great international conference. So what are the languages that you are actually able to speak in that you can put in here? Finally, I also want to think about who are the people that you can communicate fluently with. And that isn't necessarily spoken language, but this could be jargon or expertise in a field. So maybe you have a background in marketing. You are able to speak marketing to the marketing team really well. You understand their needs or the language they need to understand the end goal of what you need from them. Are you able to speak business? Those are other types of languages that I think fit in here, because that makes you an asset to your team to be able to communicate with other business functions or possibly other companies. You can see the applicability there. Next, we have our inventory. Your inventory, what's in your backpack, or what's downloaded on your computer. So this could be VS Code, GitHub tools and technology that you use. I also would put any certifications or degrees that you have in this category. These are things that you've worked and built into to have as tools in your toolkit. You've built so much into those. So thinking about specifically tools and technologies, what is it that you have in your inventory? And finally, we have proficiencies. And this can pull from the previous two a little bit, but this is things like project management. Maybe you are incredibly proficient at project management. Maybe it's negotiation. You are a really skilled negotiator. You know how to talk to people. You know how to get what you want or what your team needs. And this could be things outside of work too. I love Sudoku and logic puzzles. So being able to think logically about things, these are things that I'm really proficient in, but that ability plays into being able to think logically about problems in code or issues that the team is facing. So your proficiencies, what do you consider yourself an expert at? Put that in there, because in indirect ways, that can be a huge asset to the team that you're on. Moving forward, we've talked about the individual. Now, how do we look at this and what everyone else brings to the table? In Dungeons & Dragons, usually, if you're in person, you're sitting around a dining room table, you're rolling dice, you're laughing and adventuring through this context together. It might be dragons, it might be giant spiders, it might be a cave with treasure at the end. You never know what the DM is going to throw at you. We have a little more foresight with the projects and everything that come our way, but sometimes issues come up that attack us randomly. And you never want to be someone who's going at that totally alone. So how do we evaluate what everyone brings to the table? There are a lot of ways to do this, and I'm not going to specifically go into one, but one thing that you can think about is a simple skills matrix. Thinking about what are the skills on this list that are absolutely essential to our team, and maybe things that we haven't assessed as a team. And where does everyone fit on this? How did everyone self-assess? Do we want to give someone more credit, or do we need to actually assess this? There's Ray Dalio has created baseball cards that he uses at his company. Maybe that's more your style. Maybe Dungeons & Dragons isn't it. But how are you creating tools that let you see those strengths and weaknesses in the important fields for your team? There are programs like CIFA. There are the durable skills. There are so many different tools. There's Strengths Finder, which I'm a big fan of. Depending on what your organization looks like, the culture that you've built, the skills that are the really essential ones that you want to identify, it's really important to know where your team is at and what you can be doing to push people forward, as well as build up and make hiring decisions. So who's missing from the table? Once you've assessed yourself, and now you've done the work to look at where your team is at, who is really high in technical proficiency and who's lower. That lower person maybe could learn from the higher level person and be brought up. Maybe someone needs more skills in negotiation or public speaking. Maybe someone needs more encouragement to put themselves out there as a representative of the team. There's so many different ways that you can identify ways that people can help build up the other folks on your team, as well as identify ways that external professional development could be helpful, as well as who's missing genuinely from your team. Teams are hiring. How are you assessing not only for technical proficiency, but also for the soft skills? Because technical proficiency is just one small part of what people bring to the table. So that can impact things, like I said, hiring decisions. How do we want to build up the people? How do we want to send them to different exercises or conferences or gain mentorship from different people in the company? How do you want to assign mentors on the team? Is that something that those people want? Is that something that they would benefit from getting that experience? It can also help affect the project scope, timeline, and how you're planning it. How are you looking at what needs to get done and being strategic, using those wisdom skills to plan out ahead and think about what that timeline might look like? And as you're thinking about the professional development or hiring piece of it, I like to think about it as culture fit versus culture add. I think this may be stolen from Brené Brown, I'm not positive. But the idea that many times in hiring, people talk about, oh, like we have a culture fit interview. We want to talk, make sure that you mesh with the team, that whole idea. And a culture fit is not a bad thing, but a culture fit can also mean that you end up gravitating towards people who think, look, sound, act like you. A fit doesn't necessarily mean that you're driving for the diversity of the team. So how are you able to be strategic and look for the people who are culture adds, the people who are bringing new and higher levels of experience in different areas that maybe you haven't thought about that can give new and impactful perspectives to your team? So we've talked about that self-assessment. We've talked about identifying your team. We've talked about who's missing. And now the quest continues. Continue to discover your own character, build your party to complete your adventure, and embark on your quest. And thank you guys so much for being here at Dungeons & Developers.